So let's rewind way back to the 11th century. A guy named Saint Anselm of Canterbury. He starts by defining God as a being greater than which cannot be conceived. In other words, just picture the absolute greatest, most perfect thing you can possibly imagine.
We can all imagine this perfect being, right? We have the idea in our heads. But then he makes this really critical move in step 3. He says it's obviously greater to exist in reality than to just be an idea in someone's mind. So think about it. If that greatest being you're picturing only exists in your head, well, then you could actually imagine something even greater, one that's exactly the same but also exists for real. So by definition, the truly greatest conceivable being must exist in reality.
Okay, now let's fast forward about 600 years to René Descartes. He comes at this from a slightly different angle. Descartes was a big believer that some truths are just self-evident if you have a clear and distinct idea of them in your mind. And for him, the idea of God was a prime example of this. Descartes' proof is pretty similar, but he talks about perfections. He says, look, the idea of God is the idea of a supremely perfect being. And a perfect being, by its very nature, can't be lacking any perfections. But then, and this is the whole game right here, he claims that existence itself is a perfection, just like being all-powerful or all-knowing is a perfection. So, if God is perfect, he can't possibly lack the perfection of existence. Therefore, he has to exist. But then, in the 18th century, the legendary German philosopher Immanuel Kant walks onto the scene with one simple, devastating sentence. Existence is not a predicate. A predicate is just a fancy term for a property that tells you something more about a subject. It's actually pretty simple. If I say the apple is red, the word red is the predicate. It adds a new characteristic, its color, to our concept of the apple. Okay, let's see this in action. If I tell you the kite is red, I've just added a new property to your concept of a kite. You're now thinking of a specifically red kite. I've changed the idea. But what if I say the kite exists? Kant's whole point is that the word exists adds absolutely nothing new to your concept of the kite. Your mental image of it, its diamond shape, its tail, its string, doesn't change one single bit. Kant made this crystal clear with his most famous example, and it's a really good one. Let's try it out as a little thought experiment. Just ask yourself, what is the conceptual difference between these two things? First, I want you to imagine 100 coins in your mind. Really picture them. Think about their size, their weight, the metal they're made of. Got it? Okay, now I want you to imagine those exact same 100 coins are real and they are physically sitting in your pocket. The big question is, did your concept of those 100 coins change at all between the two scenarios? Conceptually, there is absolutely zero difference. The idea of 100 coins is completely identical whether they're real or just imaginary. I mean, sure, having the real coins in your pocket is a whole lot better, but the fact of their existence doesn't add a new feature or property to the definition of the coins themselves. So here's what it all boils down to. When we say something exists, we aren't describing a feature of the thing itself. We're just making a claim that out there in the real world, there's an actual object that matches our concept. So existence can't make a concept greater or more perfect because it's not a property of the concept at all. It's just a statement about whether that concept has a match in reality. So if you remember, both of those arguments were trying to treat the statement God exists as what's called an analytic truth. An analytic truth is just something that's true by definition, like all bachelors are unmarried, or a triangle has 3 sides. You can't deny it without contradicting yourself. They wanted God does not exist to sound as crazy as a 3-sided figure doesn't have 3 sides. But Kant comes along and says, nope, you've got it all wrong, because existence isn't part of the concept of God. The statement God exists is actually a synthetic statement. And a synthetic statement is a claim about the way the world actually is. To find out if it's true, you have to go out and check. You need some kind of evidence. And you can totally deny a synthetic statement without any logical contradiction. So let's lay out the final formal takedown. 1. Existence isn't a real property, so it can't be part of a concept. 2. That means existence isn't part of the concept of God. 3, which means God exists, can't be true by definition. 4, which means saying God does not exist isn't a logical contradiction. And the final blow, 5. Therefore, you cannot prove the existence of God just by analyzing the concept of God. The whole argument just collapses. Ultimately, what Kant so brilliantly showed all of us is this, and it's a huge takeaway. You simply cannot define something into existence. You can't just cleverly build the word exists into the definition of a thing and then declare that because of your clever definition, the thing must be real. Logic just doesn't work that way.